Some structures on Earth were built so high above the ground that simply looking at them can make your heart race. They hang over cliffs, stretch across deep valleys, or cling to mountainsides where one narrow path can turn every step into a test of courage. In these places, architecture does not feel safe or ordinary, but bold, fragile, and almost impossible to believe. From ancient monasteries and cliffside sanctuaries to hanging bridges, skywalks, and shelters suspended in the air, each structure reveals how far humans are willing to go to conquer height, fear, and isolation. This journey takes us to the world's most dangerous hanging structures, where height, isolation, and human ambition turn every construction into a test against gravity itself. Not the dark inside of a cave, Muir Caves leaves a strong impression with a limestone ridge rising from an ancient seabed where sharp rock edges point straight toward the sky. After more than 250 million years of faulting and karst weathering, this limestone mass was worn by rainwater into hard and jagged cracks. Although it is only about 328 feet high, the almost vertical mountainside quickly turns the climb into a heavy challenge for the legs and the breath. With no large machines to help, people in the past carried stone up a slope of about 70 degrees to build 486 steps, hugging the mountain. On the highest peak, the stone dragon lies along a rock edge less than 2 feet wide, where both sides open into unguarded space. In return, from that narrow summit edge, the whole valley and winding river open below the feet, while anyone standing there is still only a few steps from the empty space on both sides. From the dark tunnel inside the mountain core, Baylong Elevator slides its glass cabin close to a 380-million-year-old sandstone cliff, opening straight down to the green valley below. Within a total lift of about 1,070 feet, the first 505 feet are hidden inside the rock, making the moment the cabin leaves the darkness for open air feel sudden. When the cabin moves beyond the rock, thousands of quartz sandstone pillars suddenly rise among the green forest, creating an overwhelming view. At about 16 feet per second, the elevator pulls people upward very fast, creating a light pressure in the chest, like the moment a plane takes off. To keep the outdoor system stable, the cables, guide rails, and counterweights have to be anchored deep into the mountain core, turning the cliff into part of the machine. Standing close to the clear glass, visitors see the valley drop away right under their feet, making this short ride a major challenge for anyone afraid of heights. Hidden inside a hollow curve of limestone cliff, Madonna della Corona surprises visitors when the western wall and the church ceiling are actually solid mountain rock. At a height of about 2,539 feet, only a small part of the structure rests on a rock ledge, while most of the building has to be held by steel cores set deep into the vertical cliff. Before the 20th century, bricks, stone, marble statues, and bronze bells were once lowered by hand pulleys above a drop of about 2,297 feet. From the valley below, the white marble mass appears as if it is caught between the grey cliff walls, right under the jagged rock arch called the Crown. Sitting above the mouth of a V-shaped valley, the church front often faces rising wind, leaving wear marks on the marble through many centuries. Standing on the balcony outside the church, visitors are separated from the deep drop by only a thin railing, enough to make anyone afraid of heights feel tense. The howling shriek of icy mountain winds tears through a fragile suspension structure. It looks like a giant skeleton stretched across a raging river. This bridge does not belong where it now stands. It was first built in a different village, then moved 100 miles away on the order of a local ruler. That order came in 1968 from the ruler of Hunza. His goal was simple: connect two small villages across the river. Today, it stretches more than 600 feet across Pakistan's Hunza region. Massive gaps between its rotting wooden planks test anyone's nerve. A major flood swept this bridge away completely in 2010. 2 years later, local villagers rebuilt it, plank by plank, exactly as it once stood. Now imagine walking across those swaying boards, wind howling, river roaring below. Would you dare to look down? Clinging to a vertical cliff for more than 1,500 years, Hanging Monastery stands suspended at a height of 164 feet, with no foundation on the ground below. Thanks to constant air currents inside the canyon and deeply soaked natural tung oil, the wooden structure stays dry and resists the wear of time. Its main support comes from horizontal beams inserted deep into the rock core, combined with flexible mortise and tenon joints that help the structure stand through many earthquakes. The complex of 40 dark red halls looks like a giant swallow nest attached to the cliff, connected by narrow corridors and spiral stairs clinging to the rock face. Because the cliff curves inward like a crescent, much of the floor does not touch the rock, leaving a deep, empty space exposed beneath the thin wooden boards. Every step becomes tense when the wooden planks creak, while gaps underfoot reveal the deep drop directly below. This terrifying suspension bridge was never planned for convenience at all. It came into being from the sudden, catastrophic disappearance of ancient natural ice. Just decades ago, brave mountaineers could simply walk straight across one massive, solid glacier to reach safety in the Swiss Alps. But brutal climate shifts rapidly melted that spectacular icy landscape. It left behind a massive, impassable gap and forced engineers to build a dangerous walkway instead. Hanging completely exposed in mid-air, the spectacular Drift Bridge stretches exactly 557 feet across a freshly formed glacial lake. Suspended at a dizzying 328 feet above jagged rocks and swirling water, every mountain gust sends this incredibly thin structure swaying violently beneath your trembling feet. Crossing drift, then, is not just a test of heights. It is the feeling of walking through a landscape, changing right in our own time. From a distance, a giant ribbon of curved steel seems to float mysteriously through the clouds, with almost nothing visible beneath it. That strange illusion is the Langkawi Sky Bridge in Malaysia, where the enormous curved deck is supported from a single tilted steel pylon. Because the mountain terrain was nearly impossible to reach, major structural sections had to be carried up by helicopter and assembled high above the ground. Once completed, this bridge stretches more than 400 feet, and every sweeping curve reveals another view of tropical rainforest and the vast Andaman Sea. Then the beauty suddenly becomes a test of nerves, as clear glass panels appear beneath your feet and expose the open space far below. Standing there, you finally feel how small you are, walking across a thin ribbon of steel suspended between mountain and sky. Hanging on a cliff at a height of 1,312 feet, Sky Lodge Adventure Suites turns a normal night of sleep into an experience in the thin air of mountains nearly 9,843 feet high. This place faces strong daytime sun, temperatures that can drop below 41 degrees Fahrenheit at night, and valley winds blowing hard across the cliff. To stay stable, each drop-shaped pod is made from aircraft-grade aluminum and fixed to the cliff with 20 load-bearing steel cables. Inside the isolated pod, everything works off-grid, using only solar panels to power a few small lights. Before guests can lie inside that pod, there is no elevator, so they must wear safety gear and climb a nearly 90-degree cliff for about 1.5 to 2 hours. The tensest scene comes from the clear floor, where guests can look straight down to a drop of 1,312 feet and the green terraced fields below. Cut into a nearly 90-degree granite mass, Huashan Plank Walk is only a narrow wooden path clinging to the cliff at a height of 6,562 feet, with almost no support below. Tectonic faults from millions of years ago formed this smooth rock face, which can hardly hold soil or trees, leaving a drop of more than 3,281 feet below. Before modern machines existed, people in the past had to carve each hole into hard granite, then place L-shaped iron brackets into the rock to support the wooden boards. This path is only about 12 inches wide, almost the length of an adult foot placed sideways, so every step must be slow and firm. Iron chains fixed into the cliff are the main handholds, while the wood and metal still need checking because the weather keeps wearing them down. At the end of the plank path, walkers cannot take another route, so they must turn back and pass people coming from the opposite direction on the same narrow wooden boards. Looking like an alien space station caught on a snow-covered rock peak, Sphinx Observatory clings tightly to a narrow rock point in a cold white sea. At a height of 11,716 feet, air pressure is only about 65% of sea level, making water boil at 190 degrees Fahrenheit and making visitors easily tired from low oxygen. With no wide, flat ground, the whole structure has to cling to a sharp rock base in icy terrain, worn down by wind and ice. The average temperature all year is only about 19 degrees Fahrenheit, while strong storms can push winds up to 162 miles per hour around the exposed rock peak. The only way up is an elevator hidden inside a tunnel 384 feet long, once cut through the rock core to carry people to the top. Stepping out onto the outdoor metal floor, visitors face the dazzling snow layer that can reflect up to 90% of UV rays, making the white scene ahead both beautiful and easy to feel dizzy from. Across a vast flooded plain, UBN Bridge stretches for nearly 1 mile like a thin strip of wood where pedestrians must cross old planks with no railings on either side. All 1,086 wooden posts came from an old royal palace, then were joined with mortise and tenon craftsmanship with almost no metal nails. Thanks to the bridge's slight curve, which helps spread force, and the natural oil inside teak wood, the structure has stood in mud for nearly 170 years. Although the deck is only 7 feet wide, the bridge still carries tens of thousands of footsteps every day, making every close pass require caution. During the high water season, the water can press close to the edge of the planks, so one wrong step in the crowd can send visitors down into the mud and water below. Under the backlight of sunset, human shadows, cracked planks, and leaning wooden posts make the bridge appear like a fragile strip of wood still clinging to the water. Stacked in layers on a 45-degree slope, Key Monastery looks like a hanging fortress at 13,668 feet, where oxygen is only about 60%. Beneath that cluster of buildings, rock layers that once lay under the ocean have now been lifted into a tectonic zone, moving nearly 2 inches each year. For more than 1,000 years, the structure grew without a fixed design, adding rooms, corridors, and earth walls onto land with almost no flat space. In winter, temperatures drop to -22 degrees Fahrenheit, while day and night can differ by 36 degrees Fahrenheit, making the mountain rock expand, crack, and raise the risk of landslides. The clay, mud, and stone walls, 3 feet thick, keep warmth inside, while each building block leans closely against the terrain to stay stable. Under the deep blue sky, Key Monastery glows among a sea of rock, but the whole structure still clings to a mountain slope shaped by deep cold, tremors, and erosion. The spine-chilling creak of rotting wooden planks echoes violently through a completely desolate canyon, where only the silent ruins of a ghost town remain. Right in the middle of that desolation, this rickety walkway once served as the only lifeline for hauling precious ore from a brutal mine that drove every resident to flee. People call this place the notorious Ojuela Bridge in Mexico, a 19th-century suspension masterpiece stretching more than 1,000 feet, hanging hundreds of feet above a deadly ravine. Through that dead silent air, The bridge's incredibly fragile structure shakes violently every time harsh desert winds mercilessly sweep through. That very shaking makes every step heavy and trembling, forcing travelers to peer through massive gaps beneath their feet, fully revealing a canyon floor patiently waiting to swallow them whole. Completely surrounded by that scorching heat and utter isolation, do you have the courage to cross a haunting relic slowly being consumed by time? On a narrow rock summit, about 2,418 feet high, Popa Tongkalat Monastery places its golden shrines close to the cliff edge, making the entire complex appear suspended in the sky. Beneath it, the isolated basalt core still stands after wind and water eroded the softer rock around it for hundreds of thousands of years. Because the summit was extremely limited, early builders had to carry every brick upward and fit the shrines along natural rock ledges instead of using wide foundations. From the base of the cliff, a covered staircase winds around the dark rock, while the deep drop beside it keeps climbers constantly aware of the open space beyond the path. Morning mist often hides the mountain base and cliff edges, making the golden towers appear to float, while the true height below becomes difficult to judge. After climbing 777 steep steps barefoot, visitors reach the complex on the narrow basalt summit, where the ground ends beside almost vertical cliffs. Pressed into a fold of a desert canyon hundreds of feet deep, St. George Monastery looks like a layered stone nest hanging in heat that can rise above 113 degrees Fahrenheit. For more than 1,500 years, the structure has clung to porous and brittle limestone, inside a valley shaped by flash floods for more than 2 million years. With no flat foundation on the ground, the chapels and bell tower are arranged inside deep rock hollows, so their weight rests against the cliff instead of pushing outward. On that exposed stone base, dry red desert cliffs, green date palms, and blue domes create a strong visual contrast. The only entrance leads across a narrow stone bridge over a cracked stream bed at the bottom of the canyon, making the journey to the monastery feel slow and tense. Inside, dark, narrow, and low corridors are cut deep into the rock, forcing visitors to bend down with a feeling of both respect and caution. Like a lonely eagle's nest on a narrow rock summit, Refugio Nuvolau stands at a height of 8,448 feet, where the thin air makes visitors short of breath in the final steps. The rock supporting the refuge was once a 250-million-year-old coral reef, now pushed upward into a narrow limestone base that makes the structure cling to the mountain edge. In winter, temperatures can fall to -4 degrees Fahrenheit, while mountain winds above 62 miles per hour make even standing outside hard to balance. The summit is so narrow that the back of the building sits almost against the cliff edge, where stepping back by only a few feet is enough to make people stop. Because of that isolated position, food and supplies have to be pulled up by cargo cable from below or brought in by helicopter when the weather is bad. From the terrace, the only boundary with the drop is a low wooden fence, while the valley below shrinks like a distant model. In the middle of a dry plain, Abuna Yamatagu hides inside a red sandstone tower more than 300 million years old, rising straight into the sky like a giant stone column. Not built on the ground, the structure was carved deep into the core of the stone tower at a height of 8,465 feet, forming an almost isolated shelter. One of the most frightening climbing sections is a nearly 90-degree rock face, where just one slip of the hand could send the climber down a drop of 656 feet. On the way up, visitors also have to cross a deep crack between the rock walls, requiring complete focus in every movement. To reach the main entrance, the climber has to move along a natural rock ledge less than 20 inches wide, with a cold rock wall on one side and deep empty space below on the other. Inside, after that journey, the complex columns and domed arches are all shaped directly from stone, with simple chisels, without bricks or cement. Clinging to a nearly vertical granite cliff, as if hanging in the sky, Paro Taktsang sits unsteadily above a drop of 2,953 feet to the valley floor. Since 1692, people in the past carved into the rock mass and fixed large wooden beams to create supports reaching out into open air without modern machines. The buildings do not rest on flat ground, but have to lean into natural cracks in the cliff to stay close to the mountainside. When standing against the wooden balcony, visitors can clearly feel the height right under their feet, where the valley opens deep below the cliff. Along the journey up to the monastery, colorful prayer flags fly strongly in the wind, then give way to the sound of a waterfall dropping into the canyon near the entrance. Just when visitors think they have arrived, they still have to go down about 700 stone steps and climb back up another 300 steps while the monastery still hangs right in front of them on the cliff. The red tile roof of the Monastery of the Holy Trinity sits neatly on top of a 60-million-year-old sandstone pillar, cut flat like a giant stone table and separated from every surrounding mountainside. Not until 1925 did people carve 140 steps through the inside of the rock, leading climbers through a narrow, dark, and steep passage before reaching the monastery door. The outer wall almost connects directly with the 90-degree rock face, making a small stone falling from the window drop straight to the valley floor. Because the rock peak is dry and has no underground water source, people in the past had to carve deep cisterns into the stone core to store rainwater for daily life. From the monastery courtyard, the view opens among dark stone pillars rising around the area, while deep, empty space lies right below the rock edge. Against that cold grey stone base, the old brick walls almost press against the edge of the rock peak, leaving very little safe space around the structure. A wide, stable surface barely exists at Wat Chaloem Phra Kiat, where white pagodas stand on limestone peaks more than 200 million years old at an elevation above 2,625 feet. Because many rock summits are smaller than 22 square feet, 50 monks and local residents had to carry all construction materials up the steep mountain slopes. To keep the pagodas from shaking in strong winds, workers tied themselves with ropes near the cliff edge and drilled concrete foundations directly into the porous limestone core. The surrounding landscape is broken into countless sharp rock spires, making the entire mountain range seem to open above a vast, empty drop. On sections of steel mesh flooring that reveal the void below, visitors can easily feel dizzy as the deep drop appears directly beneath their feet. At the summit, where electricity, running water, and safe resting areas are almost non-existent, climbers have only two choices: keep going or turn back down. Instead of standing openly on a mountain peak, Kipina Monastery sits deep inside a crack in a 150-million-year-old limestone cliff, where weekly acidic rainwater has cut about 49 feet into the rock core. Right below the wooden balcony are cold winds from the canyon, and a drop of more than 131 feet down to the fast-flowing river below. By using limestone taken from inside the mountain to build its front wall, this 13th century monastery almost blends into the cliff when seen from about 1,640 feet away. The only entrance is a wooden bridge about 13 feet long across an open gap, which can be pulled up by chains to cut off access. Set between the grey cliff and dense forest, the whole monastery looks like a hidden shelter right on the edge of the canyon. Inside the narrow cave chamber, the sound of the fast-flowing river echoes back from the bottom of the gorge onto the rock wall, making the space hard to feel as quiet as a monastery usually would. Once known as the most dangerous walkway in the world, this place claimed several lives before being brought back from the edge of ruin. This is Caminito del Rey. Stretching nearly 2 miles, it clings more than 328 feet above the Guadalhorce River in southern Spain. The path was built between 1901 and 1905. It was originally meant to help hydroelectric workers move quickly between 2 job sites. But after decades without any maintenance, The walkway began collapsing piece by piece, leaving deadly gaps right in the middle of the path. Between 1999 and 2000, at least 5 people fell to their deaths, forcing officials to shut the entire path down and destroy its entrances. "15 years later, the path returned with sturdy wooden boardwalks and safety nets, turning a place once tied to death into one of Spain's most beloved destinations."
On a grey cliff face, almost 90 degrees steep, the red tile roof and white walls of Sumilla Monastery sit deep inside a natural rock crack, almost separated from the ground below. Among thick fog and strong wind, ancient workers arrange 72 narrow rooms into a vertical maze standing close to the cliff edge. From the monastery balcony, human voices almost fade away, giving way to the sound rising from the fast-flowing river at the bottom of the canyon. To support daily life in this remote place, people in the past built a hanging water channel along the smooth cliff face, bringing spring water from above down to the monastery. For many centuries, the way to reach this place once depended on a narrow wooden ladder hanging on the cliff, making every step full of risk.
Winding across nearly vertical mountains before disappearing into the desert, the Great Wall of China resembles a stone dragon, extended by human hands for more than 2,000 years. In many sections, the wall climbs slopes of 70 to 80 degrees, making the stone steps almost vertical and forcing visitors to use both their hands and feet. To keep the structure stable on such difficult terrain, some brick sections used mortar made from slaked lime and sticky rice porridge, creating a remarkably strong bond. When the wall enters the desert, however, it is built from packed yellow sand and reeds, causing its outline to almost disappear among the dunes under the harsh sunlight. Across the high mountains, the red colors of autumn slowly give way to winter snow, leaving the wall like a silver line cutting through the empty landscape. After centuries of abandonment, tree roots tear through the bricks and watchtowers slowly collapse, yet these ruins have become shelters for many wild animals. Buried deep underground, thousands of terracotta army warriors still stand silently, protecting the first emperor in the afterlife. No two faces are completely alike, because each figure has its own expression, wrinkles, and hairstyle. Between the formations, rammed earth walls, more than 8 feet thick, divide the rows of statues into deep corridors. Among the warriors stand chariots, life-sized horses, and broken statue fragments left by ancient fires and looting. Unlike their plain clay color today, all the figures were once brightly painted, but the colors, more than 2,000 years old, can peel away within only 15 seconds to 4 minutes after meeting the air. Hidden deeper below, soil around the burial complex contains mercury levels 100 times higher than normal, strengthening the legend of poisonous rivers built to protect the emperor. Arranged like hundreds of honeycomb openings across a sandstone cliff nearly 1.2 miles long, the Mogao Caves hide a colorful world of art. For more than 1,000 years, monks, merchants, and artists carved caves, built statues, and covered the chambers with murals made from mineral pigments. Yet this magnificent world is extremely fragile because the statues were made from mud around wooden frames, while the cliff is eroded by blowing sand and protected by modern wind barriers. Inside a narrow chamber, a statue rising 116 feet forces visitors to look upward, making them feel small before its enormous scale. Above them, more than 4,000 flying figures with curved ribbons appear to move, although the artists once painted them under weak oil lamps. Even more remarkably, some ceilings were carved to imitate the structure of a wooden temple, making visitors forget that this treasure lies inside fragile rock. Along 2 cliffs beside the river, more than 2,300 caves and worship niches turn the Longman Grottos into a stone honeycomb stretching 3,280 feet. Over more than 400 years, ancient craftsmen carved more than 100,000 Buddhist statues, from figures only 1 inch tall to a giant statue rising over 56 feet. This extreme difference in scale overwhelms visitors, as the giant statue smiles down, while tens of thousands of smaller figures crowd the nearby niches. Yet the marks of time are clear on statues missing their heads or arms after centuries of war, looting, and religious destruction. Despite these scars, golden lights shine into each stone chamber at night, revealing the carvings and casting the statue's shadows across the river. To explore the entire site, visitors must climb thousands of steep stone steps along cliffs covered with statues beside the river,